Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Remember to Live podcast. I am so excited to have my friend, Matt Cartwright. He is a psychotherapist who's lived a very interesting life, and he also focuses on helping others discover their true, authentic selves. I also had the pleasure of being his TEDx coach, and his TEDx talk is one of my all-time favorites. Matt, I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
And so, as I start every conversation, I want to bring us into the present space. So, let's just collectively take a deep breath and allow ourselves to be here right now, nowhere else. And I'm going to kick us off with the question I always start the podcast with. And that is, what does it mean to live a life and to live one well?
What does it mean to live a life and to live one well? For me, what it means to live a life is to live in joy and love in every single moment. To live in joy and love in every single moment, finding the joy in every experience. Now, I know there's a lot going on in the world, and it's easy because our mind is trained to see the negative and trained to see what's missing. But what I believe living a life and living it well is training our brain to see what we're giving instead of what we're receiving, to leave an impression of increase in every person that we come in contact with. And for me, that impression is one of joy, one of lightness, one of inspiration and connection, and understanding the truth of our potential and our power. I think
Yes.
for me, that's really what living a life well is knowing that you're growing, that I'm growing, that I'm evolving, and every single day, even if I am in a funk, I know that the funk is only temporary, and I'm
Yeah.
using that funk to get functional.
Yes, I love that. Oh man, you always
I'm
have like
using my
the good
funk to get
nuggets.
functional,
Oh
to
man.
see how am I functioning in a way that will increase and grow. And then life feels exciting, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think
Mm-hmm.
also living is about having clear goals for who we desire to be and what we desire to experience, and that goal is one of growing, increasing, amplifying, having an impact, and being in connection with other people and having community. That's really what living is about, is living in that connection with others from a place of joy and love.
I love that. I've been so focused on living from joy and love, especially these last couple weeks, and just anchoring in my
Yes.
joy and not letting anyone steal my joy. And when I think about why I started this podcast, and it was really because of watching my mother truly experience end of life
Mm.
regrets, like watching in real time, like, oh, there is a such thing as too late. We might always be able to think about and dream about things, but our brain and our body won't always be able to do. And
Yes.
so encouraging people to show up to life, even on those days when it feels hard, right? Even when we wake up and don't want to do it, we get another day. And if we're not using that day in the way that we want to show up in life and show up in the world and the impact we want to make, and just experience it, right? We can fly through decades and look up and be like, where did they go?
Yes, we can. My acronym for joy is JOY, just open yourself. When you're just opening yourself to connecting with others, or just opening yourself up to the possibility, or just opening up yourself to courage or to freedom, then you have to be open to the experience to experience it. And I think
Yes.
so many times we close ourselves off
Mm,
because we
mm,
get caught in the fear. I mean, I know I've done that in my life where I'm like, oh gosh, I'm afraid and I want it in my mind, but I don't just open myself up to the possibility or open myself up to letting someone else help me.
Yeah.
Open myself up to receiving support, thinking I have to do it all on my own. And then I
Yeah.
get resentful and then
Yeah.
I get angry and then I'm just not open to the light and the love and the possibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that can happen so much, on the micro in our individual lives, as you're talking about. But I'm seeing that so much on the macro with a lot of this fear that's being
Yes.
instilled in a lot of us, which is not only closing us off from each other, but it's closing ourselves off from the joy and remembering like there are good things in the world. There are good people in the world. There are good experiences to be had. And we have the power to bring that joy and that love and that good energy into the spaces that we enter,
Mm-hmm.
or to shift these spaces and to be the bridge and to be the one that shifts to the light, right? And I really just want us to understand that and tap into that, especially right now.
Especially right now because there is so much fear. And here's the thing about fear. Fear is natural. The
Mm-hmm.
unknown is naturally scary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's going to happen. I don't even know what you're going to say. I don't know what I'm
Right.
going to say. It could be something. We don't know. Things happen every day, and it's not the things that happen. It's how we respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
And are we responding from our higher selves,
Mm-hmm.
our divine selves, our
Mm-hmm.
radiant selves, our brilliant selves, our infinite possibility selves, or are we responding from our past selves
Yes.
and from the fear self? And are we tapping in to what's missing instead of tapping into what's possible?
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's the piece that I think that people forget is if we're not conscious and present,
Mm-hmm.
we're creatures of habit. And we repeat ourselves and we get
Yes.
locked into the paradigms of the patterns. I say people don't have problems, they have patterns.
Mm. Say that one more time,
And
just to make sure they're
people
listening.
do not have problems, they have patterns.
Yes.
And the reason why you suffer is because you're repeating the same pattern over and over again, whether it be a pattern of thinking, a pattern of feeling, or a pattern of behaving. And then you expect that something else is going to shift when things don't shift out there unless I shift in here.
Mm-hmm.
See, I have the
Yeah.
power to
Mm-hmm.
determine my perception.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I get to the power, because remember, within everything wanted is the unwanted. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm always at a state of perception and deciding, what am I seeing here? Am I seeing the problem or am I seeing the possibility?
Yeah.
Am I seeing the function or am I seeing the dysfunction?
Yeah.
And so both exist. It's like the yin and the yang, right? A little bit of
Mm-hmm.
black exists in the white, a little bit of white
Mm-hmm.
exists in the black, a little bit of joy exists in the sadness, and a little bit of sadness exists in the joy. And when you stay into that open, that fullness, to be able to see the duality or the wholeness, the oneness of all things, then things are still scary, but in that
Mm-hmm.
fear, you also tap into the potential.
Yeah.
Especially lately, I've been like, okay, I mean, can we talk about the election or no? This is good
We
for.
can talk. This is a safe space to talk about whatever's on the top of our mind, because we are
Here's
in
what
this present
happened.
moment.
The night of the election, I said, ooh, the Holy Spirit came to me and said, it's time to serve. So I'm more determined to serve in this space of fear than I might have been had things gone a different way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel that I'm being called higher to show up in a space to be a demonstration for others to see their potential
Mm-hmm.
and to notice and to learn how our mind works. Because if you don't know how to work with your mind will work against you.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Yeah.
don't know how to work with your mind will work against you because we are patterns. So if you don't know
Yeah.
how to spot those patterns and being like, ooh, am I getting the results that I want? Yes, great, keep going. No, then I need to pivot. I need to
Yeah.
shift.
Yeah.
And then if you don't know how to pivot and shift, then you're going to stay stuck. And that's where people get frustrated and they suffer because they feel helpless and stuck because they haven't learned. They don't teach us how to work with your mind in school.
No. And they don't teach us how to get present.
No.
Yeah. And I think that's where it starts, right? In order for us to see all these things you're talking about, we have to learn how to get present with ourselves. We have to learn how to cut through all the noise so we can hear ourselves, so we can hear our higher self. So we're not constantly making decisions and letting prescribed lives and fear and the what ifs and the shoulds and the supposed tos and everybody else's stuff guide us. Like we have to learn how to get still and present within ourselves to show up in our own lives and live the lives we want.
In the reaction. That's the problem with, well, it's not a problem with children. That's the pattern with children. For the first 7 years of our lives, we just take in everything emotionally. There's no filter. If they say you're a bad boy, you say, yes, I am. If they, and it's not necessarily explicit. It's the implicit in the child brain. For me, for example, like no one was home. I was left alone at age 6. I walked home from first grade with a little key around my neck.
Latchkey
I walked
kids.
into the house, latchkey kid, walk in. And I interpreted that to mean I wasn't wanted or I wasn't lovable. But that wasn't true. That was just a function of the times because they'd leave the kids in those days. Remember they had to have the commercial. Do you know where your children are? It's 10 p.m. It's like, you don't forgot you had kids.
Yeah.
But it was okay because, that was good and that was bad. I learned to be very self-reliant. But the challenge with that self-reliance also came with not learning how to receive help because I just learned, well, I got to do it on my own.
Right.
And then I started to question, am I lovable? Plus, I was a little gay kid, and I was also, I have to learn how to be mindful of what the other people are going to say to stay safe. Because at the end of the day, this is what it's all about. Is we're just trying to be safe, right?
Yeah.
If we wouldn't be afraid if we thought we were going to be safe.
Right.
We fear our safety, so therefore we're like, oh gosh, what if this happens and what if that happens, and then I won't be okay. And that's what little kids do, is we sort of are always scanning the environment to make sure that we're safe because we're so vulnerable. And if we're not taught how to express ourselves or taught how to understand what's happening around us, then in the childlike brain, we personalize it and say, well, it must be my fault that no one's here. They must not want to be around me. It's not, oh, well, my mom is working 2 jobs because she has to support the family and me and my sister, and because my father is only giving so much in child support and they've got divorced. Like that rationale doesn't make sense to the child brain.
Yeah. And sometimes we hold on to those things in adulthood and don't realize that we're anchored in it, even though it doesn't serve us anymore, even though we're adults and we can make our own decisions and we control our environments. We don't recognize what we're operating from. And
then the adults feel guilty. So then they try to, my mom used to buy me Izod shirts, even though she couldn't afford them. They were
I remember Izod, yes.
She used to buy me the Izod. Oh, I love the alligator. I'm like, so she went into debt because she felt guilty, which created more stress, which created her having to work harder. And which created her learning how to, I'm just thinking because it's
having flashbacks.
That hustle, right?
Yeah.
I'm having flashbacks, because she had to hustle to survive. And so I've always sort of had to hustle to survive.
Yeah.
And when you're self-reliant like I am, it always feels like everything is a hustle because you're trying to just, move this around and do this thing and that thing. And it's exhausting because we're not lifting people up or lifting children up to encourage them to be their authentic selves at an early age, accepting the creativity in children, the fantasy and the imagination, and fueling that so that when we get older, we continue to use that imagination and that encouragement and that strong sense of self to then help serve others.
Yeah, yeah. We're taught at a young age. This is what I did my whole TEDx talk about is, it's time to get serious. No more play, no more imagination, no more creativity. Like this is what a responsible adult looks like. And then we start taking on those labels. And so this kind
Yes.
of is a perfect segue to talk a little bit about your TEDx talk. Also, the Izod thing made me think of your talk of
Right.
of labels, and identities that
Labels,
we
right.
take on. And so, yeah, let's talk a little bit about your TEDx talk, the theme, like why that came up for you, and what you want people to take away from it.
Well, the TEDx talk title is We Are All in Drag, Our Collective Identity Crisis. And as a former drag queen and current psychotherapist, one thing I've realized in my practice is right now, everyone's a drag. Everyone's wearing a mask, especially with social media these days.
Uh,
Online, people are wearing filters, performing, putting on a show. They have all these identities. When it becomes more focused on how we are rather than who we are. And
mm,
that performative nature disconnects us from our authentic self, and that's dangerous
yeah.
because then it becomes about making sure that other people say we're okay. And
Mm,
that is an endless hustle that will never fulfill our sense of worthiness because no one can tell me I'm worthy. I have to feel it from my inside out. I have
yeah.
to work on those limiting beliefs, those limiting labels that I was assigned as a child when I didn't have the filter to say, no, no. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
remember walking down the hallway, it was the second grade, and um, my eyes, they do this. I have nystagmus. And so they thought I was blind when I was born. And because of that, when I read, it takes a moment for me to focus. So I read a little bit slower. And so they sent me to reading classes. And I'm walking down the hallway to the reading classes. And I go outside and I pass this other little boy. And he called me a faggot
Mm,
at like 7 years old. And now
mm,
I didn't know exactly what it was,
mm-hmm.
but I knew that it pierced my soul. And I was like,
Yeah.
that didn't feel good. It just,
Mm,
oh gosh, he sees that I'm different. It's like, oh, I can't hide that. I wasn't doing anything but walking down the hallway. And so I always had that sense that I was different. And instead of it being encouraged and being like, yes, we welcome all here, it was like, you must fit into this certain mold,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? We used to go hunting and they would go, because I grew up in Texas and we would
Mm-hmm.
go hunting and they put this vest on me, which is where they catch, which holds all the birds. You go quail hunting. And then when they would shoot the birds, I'm like 7 years old running through the fields to go get the bird. And they're like, okay, now that you have the bird, here's how you pull the head off. And I'm like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, I'm like traumatized.
Mm,
I'm here wearing like dead birds on my body. And
yeah.
all
I'm
the other
traumatized
kids were
just
like,
thinking about it.
yay. And I'm just like, hey. And at
Yeah.
that moment, I knew that I'm not like the other boys. And then hearing that word, faggot, and knowing, like, okay, is that what I am? Right? And we start to question if we're not given encouragement to know who we are, we start to
Mm,
determine who we are based upon who other people tell us we are. Oh,
yeah.
you're sensitive.
Mm,
Oh, you're too emotional.
mm,
Oh, if you want something to cry about, I'll give you something to cry about. Boys don't
mm-hmm.
cry. We start to get all of these ideas about how we're supposed to behave, and it clouds our sense of self.
Yeah.
And then we're constantly in this hustle for validation
Mm-hmm.
because we don't feel that we can be. I didn't feel that I could be my authentic
Yeah.
self.
Or
And I didn't have
belong.
any roles or belong.
Yeah.
And
We
so
want
I
to
tried to
belong.
perform. I was a very funny kid. Still funny as far as I'm concerned. It's always funny. But the humor was to deflect from the loneliness inside. The humor
Mm,
was try to be like, okay, I know I'm different, but if I could be a clown and I'll be the butt of the joke and always have those clapbacks, then people won't feel as threatened by my difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we learn to build
And,
these defense mechanisms.
yeah, defense
And
strategies
we all
keep
just
us
want to
safe.
find spaces where we can show up and exist as who we are and feel accepted and loved and belong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the challenge, though, is then you're one person at school and then you're another person at home.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
so
the
it
masks
creates
start.
this sort of, and the mask,
Yeah.
yes. And so that's really what I was talking about in my TED talk, is that when we become more focused on how we are and how we show up to the world, we become less focused on who we're being.
Yeah.
And when you want to talk about living and
Mm-hmm.
living authentically, it starts with being honest and being free to express ourselves without
Mm-hmm.
fear of other people's judgment.
Yeah. And one of the things I
And
think was really powerful that you did in your talk with the visuals is that, like, some people may hear these words and think, you know what? Well, I do show up as myself. I don't wear any labels. I'm not in drag. I don't wear masks. But you don't realize that when you're wearing your sports team, or when you're, wearing your club or your sorority, or you're dressing up
listen,
for Halloween, or like every time we are affiliating ourselves with a group, we are showing up as part of something outside of
yeah,
ourselves.
we are. And we have so many labels
Mm-hmm.
that were assigned to us, and I don't think we even realize it. Like, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm an uncle, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm my political party, my political association, my nationality, my skin color, my socioeconomic status, my sexuality, like all of these labels, and each one has its own meaning
Yeah.
as we use to categorize and describe people.
Mm-hmm.
And in my TED talk, it was an awareness talk to get people to focus on how we're showing up, how we're being instead of how we are.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that the phrase "How are you" came about at a time when there was like the plague, and people would ask how you are to determine, like, hey, how are you? Like, are you
Mm-hmm.
sick? Like, do I need to be,
Right.
am I
Yeah.
safe or not, versus
Yeah.
who are you being, and
Mm-hmm.
showing up from our values.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're so
Yeah.
evaluated by our
Mm-hmm.
performance,
Yeah.
right? Are you an A student? Are you a jock? Like, we're so evaluated by what we do
Mm-hmm.
instead of the quality of our heart and who we're being in our
Yeah.
interactions. Are we showing up with that joy? Are we showing up with
Yeah.
love, with
Yeah.
honesty, with compassion, with a sense of responsibility? Are we showing
Yeah.
up in a trustworthy manner? And that when we show up in these ways, then that affects what we do, and then
Yeah.
what we have and
Yeah.
experience. But we have it the other way around. We're so focused on, well, when I have that relationship, then I'll do all those relationship things, and then I'll be loved and I'll be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, well, if I show up by being happy and being loving, I can do those loving and happy things that will create
Mm-hmm.
a happy and joyful relationship.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How do we
Oh man,
start?
I
How do we
wish I'd
start with
have
that
known
end in
that.
mind?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I wish I'd have known that when I was a kid, because it was so focused on, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
You notice we do that with children, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whenever they do something wrong, what are you doing? What is
Yes.
wrong with you?
Yes. As a mother, I've probably said that phrase 10,238
Right.
times, like in the
Instead of,
last
help
week.
me
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Help me understand what's the thinking. What's your process? What
Mm-hmm.
was your desire? Who are you being right now when you're doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Are you present?
Mm-hmm.
What are you hoping to gain? What's the impact that you want to make by
Yeah.
doing what you're doing? And when you just start to ask those questions in a different way, because I tell people the questions that we were asked as kids are the questions we ask ourselves as adults.
Mm. Mm. That's good.
So if we want to change those questions in children, we need to ask them new questions. We can't keep asking them those questions. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
My favorite. Why would you do that? I don't
Right.
know.
Right. Yes. And we're all
Why would I
programmed.
do that?
Like, yeah,
Programming is
we're
why we would do
programmed.
that. We're
Well, also
programmed.
we're programmed to ask that, right? Like we've just,
Exactly.
and that's why I think it's so powerful, especially because you said this in your talk, and we've talked about this just in our conversations of even when you talk about greeting people, right? The how are you? We don't even think about what we're saying. It's just
Hey, what's up?
default,
How are you?
default.
Fine. Good.
And just the way that you gave the gift of, instead of saying, how are you? Asking, who are you being?
Who are you being?
Brings us to the present moment. It makes someone pause because it's not the program. It's like, wait, what? What? It makes you
What do you
stop and
mean?
think. Yeah. Yeah.
And what I even mean by being is, what is the energy that you're bringing?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
B-E, bringing energy. When you're
Yeah.
bringing energy, you affect your reality. You affect, because everything is energy.
Yeah.
Every thought has an energy, as a vibration. Every vibration creates a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, feelings
Mm-hmm.
are the words we give to the vibration of our consciousness.
Yes. When I was in corporate and I had, an office with a door way back in the day when that existed, I used to have a sign on my door that said, please be responsible for the energy you bring into this space.
Thank you. Right?
Yes.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Yes. Yes, because that's one thing we can control, right? As humans, we
Mm-hmm.
may have that initial response that is just our human response, that's just our biological response. But once we feel something, we get to choose what we do with it. We get to choose, do we transmute that energy? Do we hold on to that energy? Do we let it go? What's in my next breath, how do I want to be? How do I want to feel? And we can choose something different.
Mm-hmm. And it goes back to that present. It's a practice of awareness, of
Mm-hmm.
teaching people what, not just how to be present, but what
Yeah.
to focus on. And that's what I do as a therapist. It's like, I say people are patterns, right? But patterns of
Mm-hmm.
what? Patterns of thinking, patterns
Mm-hmm.
of feeling, and
Mm-hmm.
patterns of behaving. So
Mm-hmm.
you always want to be looking at, okay, so what's the thought? What's the
Mm-hmm.
feeling? And then what's the behavior that happened as a result of the thought and the feeling? Because those behaviors repeated are what create our habits. And those
Mm-hmm.
habits repeated create our beliefs,
Yep.
right? Because I've done this same thought, this same feeling through repetition, repetition, repetition. And this is what I believe. And then when you have a belief, like, I don't know, I'm not good enough,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then that belief repeated will attract other belief systems like it. So I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I'm not important. I'm not
I don't
lovable.
deserve a good
I don't
life. I don't
deserve this.
deserve
And
this big
so
life,
now you have this belief systems, and those belief systems are what create your identity. And your identity then therefore creates your reality. And when we can start to understand that I have a lot more power in creating the reality, then I'm not helpless.
Right.
Because whatever shows up in my life is just an opportunity for me to bring the energy of faith, trust, confidence, joy, and love in the face of whatever's showing up. And that's how we actually diffuse it, shift it. As I say, you got to lift it to shift it. You have to
Yes.
lift the energy to shift the energy. You have to lift your perception of what you're seeing to shift. So if I stay in a fear state, a terror state, then that's all I'm going to be able to see is the worst case scenario.
Right.
But if I lift myself up to the 10,000 view to see, like, wait, what's possible here? What could this mean?
Yeah.
Then I start to see, well, what's great about this? Well, what's great about this is this. What's great about this? And then that's how we lift it and shift it. And then you actually, I actually feel more empowered in my life, and I'm not walking around in that fear state.
Yeah.
The thing about fear is when you're scared, you're not able to really think.
Right. It
So
shuts
it's
off that part. It's
really
taking that
that,
energy to fight, right?
yeah,
Or
because you're out
run.
of your
Yeah.
window of
Hmm.
tolerance. So you have to learn how to get back down into your window of tolerance. And so like you can still feel and be present to the experience, but not so overwhelmed by it. And
Yeah.
then you have new possibilities
Hmm.
to be able
Hmm.
to decide, oh, okay, well, what am I choosing in this moment?
Yeah.
Because
I
we're
like
always
to.
a choice.
Yeah. I like to whenever I feel fear, I like to get present and say, okay, fear, what are you trying to protect me from?
Yeah.
What are you trying to keep me safe from? Is it real?
Or
Because,
prepare me for.
yeah, our brains don't know the difference. And that's one of the things I recognize how often in corporate we use life threatening words for non life threatening situations. How often do we say, oh,
Everything.
I have all these fires at work? I got to put all these
Mhm.
fires, put all these fires.
I got a
Our body
million
doesn't
things to
know.
do.
And our bodies don't know the difference. They're just like, ooh, alarm, alert. Okay, I got to protect you. And it's like, it's really not a fire. It's really not life threatening. Like I was in
No,
advertising. It was an ad. Like it was not saving lives, you know?
no.
Yeah.
But we get into that patterned way of being, and then we just think that's who we are. And
Mm-hmm.
even that we had a little accident with the children this morning. The dogs got peed in the house,
Mm-hmm.
and I told my partner about it. I was like, "Oh my god, it was awful. It was terrible." And I was like, "It's pee, though. It's fine. Like, clean it up. You put a little urine destroyer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it frustrating?
Yeah.
Yes, but we get so upset about things happening
Mm-hmm.
when things are always happening. And it's how we choose to respond instead of
Yes.
react that really empowers us to make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Life's gonna life. Life is gonna
Life
life.
is going to life. And the question is, are you going to get sucked up in life and do what you've always done? Or are you going to get clear and focus on who you want to become as a result
Mm-hmm.
of this? That's why having a clear goal, a clear desire of who you want to be. And I think that we don't do that when we teach children. We ask that, we say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the
Mm-hmm.
what leads us to, okay, well, I want to be a doctor, a lawyer. We
Mm-hmm.
don't say, okay, well, do you want to be an honest doctor, a caring doctor, a loving
Mm-hmm.
doctor? Like, what are the values that you desire to be? Because who you're being one place is who you're going to be in every place.
Yes.
So if we focus on helping children to be honest and to be courageous and to be joyful, then they'll be that whatever they do. And in actuality, they'll probably find their passions more quickly because they'll feel more supported in exploring so
Yeah.
that they can make a decision about what brings them passion, what brings them
Right.
joy.
And yeah. And think about even like how that carries through to adulthood, right? Because now when we go places or we're trying to meet people, our first question isn't, who are you? Tell me what brings you joy. Tell me something about your life. It's what do you do?
Yeah, what do
So
you
what do
do?
you do?
Oh, what do you
So what do
do?
you
Hey,
do?
what do you do?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I do TED Talks. That's what I do. I do TED Talks.
Yeah.
I give TED Talks,
And
right?
and you're right. And you're right.
And I write. Yes.
Let's talk a little bit
And I
about
write.
what's going to be birthed into the world soon.
Oh, this book. I've written so many different stories because you are true. It is true. I've had this colorful life. I grew up
Hmm.
in Texas. My parents got divorced. I grew up, as a young gay boy without a lot of support.
Hmm.
And I learned to hide myself and I suffered. And then when I came out, when I was 18, um, like when I was in the third grade, my sister was a cheerleader and she was elected to being the cheerleader in the sixth grade. And so my mom, my sister, we all drove to Dallas to this little office where they sold pom poms so that the cheerleader could get their pom poms. And I remember just bawling because all the cheerleaders got pom poms, but I didn't get any pom poms.
Mm.
And I was like, I wanted a pair of pom-poms. And my mother, in her kindness and generosity of spirit, she bought me a pair of pom-poms. Right. And because I've always been drawn to pom-poms and Barbies. And when my sister wasn't around, I would wear her cheerleading outfit and play on the microphone like I was at this football game. But I couldn't do that out in public. I had to do that in private. And so when I came out in, and my mother used to have these, she had these two chiffon, a yellow chiffon and an orange chiffon nightgown. And I used to dress up in it in the house and play around. So when I came out, I went to gay clubs and there were these drag queens and they were like, oh my God, they were the stars and the celebrities. And I was like, oh my God, I want to do that. So my first Halloween out, I dressed up. I borrowed my mother's sequin gown from the wedding where she was stood up by the priest, and that's but the priest she was dating, who had another wife in another town. Like, I mean,
okay, that's a whole like
that's a whole other
TV show, TV series. Yeah,
they said I was the sinner, but I just fell in love with performing and doing drag, and it created this experience for me when I moved to San Francisco and I met all these other performers and I started performing in clubs and I made a very good name for myself. I had my own nightclub in San Francisco. I walked the runway for Macy's. I danced with Grace Jones. I had a gossip column. And then, there was also a lot of pain in the masking. And in that community, the nightlife community, there's a lot of drinking and drugs. And, when it feels good when you don't feel good. And I got sucked up into this world and I kind of really lost my sense of self because it wasn't focused in a clear vision, rooted in values and principles to guide me. And I thought that, okay, I know this is not turning out well for me. So let me move to New York. And maybe my friend, he worked for a he worked for a music company. And I had I wrote a song called Give Me Back My Man, Bitch.
Oh.
Do you want to be found dead? Stiletto in your head? Give me back my man, bitch.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, I'm going to move to New York and I'm going to come out with a single. That didn't happen. When you move to New York, you ain't got time to party like that if you want to survive. You got to get a job. And so I got a job and I sort of cleaned up my act. But I still was wanting living this dual life between Madeline and Matt and like, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And I had, I got a job at Lips. It's a drag restaurant in New York. It had just opened. This was like middle of the 90s. And so I was performing there and working there and my other job at the hotel. And so somebody came in and was looking for drag queens for the MTV Music Video Awards for Madonna. And so that's how I performed with Madonna. I was one of the 12 drag queens at the 1999 MTV Music Video Awards. And I thought, oh my God. My life.
You made it, right? Madonna?
I made it.
In the 90s? Come on.
Yeah. And then the next night I'm back serving frozen cosmopolitans and calamari and in the basement of Lips restaurant, lip syncing. It's like, it did not change my life because I wasn't focused on who I was being. I was focused on who I thought everyone else wanted me to be. And I was focused on putting on a presentation, thinking that if I get successful, if I'm famous, then somehow I'll be okay. And that led me right back to the drugs until I got evicted from my apartment in 2003. And it was just like, okay, I got to get my stuff together. It's either change or die. And I think sometimes that's the sad thing is like part of the reason why I want to write this book is so that I can share with people strategies for being our authentic selves. So you don't have to get to rock bottom.
Yeah.
So you don't have to go through the pain of addiction and eviction and all the issues,
Yeah.
Because if I had been propped up and taught to focus on learning how my mind works and how to create what it is that I say I really want, understanding why I want what I want, like who I am in my vision, as opposed to, thinking that. And I think it's really challenging, and this is what's going on with social media, is that people are like, well, if I have 1 million followers, if I'm an influencer, I want to be an influencer. Influencer what? What do you want to
also think
influence
about
people to do?
that rate of
You're already an influencer.
But think about the rate of exposure. Like when we were growing up, decades ago, you kind of only knew what was on your block unless you went somewhere like a big city. That's the only time you got exposed to fame, or like we'd watch TV and be like, ooh, like you never really saw a famous person or got exposed to it.
Or
You had to like
news.
make a huge effort. And now we live in a world where one post can overwhelm you and you're known across the world, and you get this false sense of connection or community
And value, a false sense of importance.
Yeah.
You think, I posted the other day just that we voted. It was a 7-second video. It got 75,000 views, but 20% of that was hate.
And you know what? I bet 18% of the hate was bots,
a bot.
because I had a post go viral and it got 400,000 views in one platform in particular. One platform in particular
will get
95% of the hate, because there's a lot of good too, but 95% of the overwhelming hate were bots. A couple people programming the negativity and fueling it, and like you said earlier, inciting the anger, and it's not real.
That's why we have to be very clear on teaching people that what other people think about us has nothing to do with our worth and our value. Someone else approving or disapproving. I actually shared my TED Talk with somebody, and somebody I went to high school with, and she was like, based on the title, I don't think it's a watch for me. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, whoa, all right, Matt, practice what you preach. Remember that then this message isn't for you. But I said, it may not be for you, but it may be for someone you know or love. So keep that in mind.
Right.
Because the message is really that we're all wearing a mask, whether it's your church mask, whether it's your political mask, whether it's your work mask. When people show up one way to work and then they leave and they go to happy hour and they turn into somebody else. But if you stay in who you're being, you can still adapt to your different environments, but the center, your core self, is consistent. And that's what the message is it's like, really, who are you being? Because Charles Cooley in The Looking Glass Self says that we will, create our identity based around who other people think we are.
Right.
And we will create these identities based on how we want to be perceived, instead of who we are being at the center. Like, I want to be a loving person, whether I'm talking to somebody I value and agree with or somebody I disagree with. I want to be a beacon of joy and light wherever I am. And if I keep that vision of being a beacon of joy and light wherever I am, it doesn't matter where I show up. Because even if I show up in a hostile environment, I'll be like, okay, I still know who I am. I'm a beacon of joy. And what other people think about me and how other people perceive me is really a projection of their own internal narrative, because you can't see in someone else what you don't see in yourself. So when I look at people and I get frustrated by certain people, I say to myself, okay, where am I like that person?
That's such a good tool
about that person? If that person is dishonest, that's a liar. Ooh, Matt, where are you a liar? Well, I can think of 3 places right now. So I'm getting frustrated. Like that particular person, I'm thinking, that particular person doesn't follow the rules. Okay, well, where do I not follow the rules? Or where do I act in my privilege? Or where do I think the rules don't apply to me? I think we do it. We all do it. So we when we do that, it's not that I'm saying, hey, you're great. I'm saying, hey, I can see myself in you. And I think people, especially in this environment right now, people are afraid to do that because that would require a level of honesty and truthfulness and courage to
With
say, hey,
ourselves.
with ourselves, to say, hey,
Yeah.
I'm like that. And that's okay because it's a pattern I learned and it's something I learned to use to survive. But I'm safe now and I don't
Mm.
have to act the way that I've always acted. I get to
Mm.
grow. And I think, one of the things that happens is when people are like, well, how many times you ever said, well, I want to get back to that old self, or I want to get back to when I was that person. And it's like,
Mm.
why? I've
Right.
grown out of that person.
Right.
I want to grow. What is it that I
Right.
want? Oh,
Who do
that
you want to
person was committed.
become?
Right. Well, what is
Yeah.
the value that you liked about yourself back then? I liked that I was committed and disciplined. Great. So let me focus on being committed and disciplined as I am today.
Mm.
I just completed a 12-week program that I'm actually certified in to mentor people and I'm starting the program over again because who I was 12 weeks ago is not who I am now. And
Mm.
I'm hearing it from a new perspective. It's what happens when you read a book. How many times you've read a book? You're like, I read it again. I'm like, did it say, I
Right.
didn't even remember what it said. Because
Yes.
I can hear it at a different level.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're so trained to think that life is just going to be some sort of like easy and I just want to
Mm-hmm.
be happy all the time and I want to be successful. And it's like, I tell people being happy and being successful are not ways of being. Those are outcomes
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
you experience as a result of being joyful or being open for happiness,
Mm-hmm.
for success. Everybody's perception of success is different. But when I'm disciplined, when I'm committed, and when I'm focused, then I will make sure that I achieve success in my
Yes.
definition.
Right. And I think
So,
that's such a key because too many people spend decades living prescribed lives based off of
oh,
other people's definition of success. And they check all the
yeah,
boxes, right? I've been there. I checked all the boxes, climbed the ladder, checked the boxes, did all the things. And I was like, oh, that happiness bucket at the end of the 4 decades I gave isn't there. And you have to realize, like, well, I coach, this is what a lot of my coaching is on, is like, well, what is your definition of success? Like, what is the life you want to live? Like, what is the
right,
experience you want to have? Like, who do you want to be in the rooms that you walk into? And what's the impact
exactly.
you want to make?
Because that is, and your vision, I have a vision, and a purpose that I'm always striving for.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't change. My purpose is to help heal and transform the world. How I
Mm-hmm.
do that can be in different ways. But if I'm always staying in that purpose, if I see someone on the side of the street, am I helping to heal and transform that person?
Mm-hmm.
When I talk to somebody at the grocery store, although self-checkout, you don't really talk to anybody at the grocery store anymore. But if I did talk to somebody at the grocery store, when I used to talk to people,
Yeah.
but every person that I come in contact, how am I helping to leave them with an impression of increase, that their life is
Yeah.
somehow better? If we all did that, if we were all being in a state of love and compassion and connection, then that we would raise the vibration and the energy, and this division and the fear would be actually shifted, and we
Mm-hmm.
would open ourselves up to possibilities on how to solve some of the challenges we as a world are facing.
I think that is the perfect button and the perfect, energy to shift to some funner questions, because that's what I want people to leave with. I want people to leave with that. Like,
You think I,
we
you think
get
I'm
to
fun?
use our lives in a way and our energy for good, right? But before we totally wrap up this
Oh
conversation,
my
because
God, I didn't realize how long
because
I thought we'd been like 20
because
minutes.
I mean, that's why I love talking to you, because we can talk about so many different things and it's always anchored in joy and truth and being in connection and helping people to find that within themselves. And the other thing that I'm constantly hoping people remember to do is to play and have fun and get to know each other in those fun ways. So I have some fun questions for you.
Well, can I say one thing about
Of
that?
course. Yeah.
Because based, what you're saying too is when you want to create what it is that you want in your life, you must use your imagination, because the
Yes.
mind only thinks in images. And it
Yes.
happens twice, once in our imagination and then once in our reality. And if you do not practice your imagination, your playful mind atrophies.
Yes, it
And so when
does.
you're wanting to create your goals and seeing what's possible, that playfulness is necessary
Mm.
to be able to imagine, well, what's this? Or what if I did this? And what if I did that? And what if I did that? So that you can actually see it. And
Yes.
that's why I say you have to be it until you see it. So I have to be love and joyful until I see love and joy in the world around me. And
Yes.
then I know that it's actually manifesting. And that's what I think we didn't train ourselves to as children. We're like, I shouldn't be this,
Mm.
instead of here's who I get to be. And so when we focus
Mm.
on what we don't want, we end up creating all the suffering,
Right.
as allowing children and adults to just say, well, who do you want to be? You can be
Yeah.
whoever you want, but you must have a clear imagination and visualization of what that looks like.
Yep.
And I think that's maybe we're going to ask me the questions about fun, about who I
Yeah. Yeah.
what brings me joy. And all this.
Yes, yes. And I love ending on imagination and play because I think they are critical and they are critical for what we're
Yeah.
going to need in the world now.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, my
What's
first question,
possible? Okay.
yes, my first question is what's currently your favorite part of your day?
What's currently my favorite part of my day? This is going to sound so wild. Um, my favorite part of my day is when I am, well, a couple of things, when I am interacting with other people,
Mm-hmm.
and not just, oh God, so many answers are coming to me. Not just when I'm working with people, because I love what I do. I love
Mm-hmm.
connecting with people. But I also have been doing this thing where I get in the shower and I bring my phone and I listen to my lessons that I want to
Mm-hmm.
make sure I get into my
Mm-hmm.
mind. So like in the beginning, my favorite part of my day is in the morning, where I'm fueling myself with what I want to grow, and through that repetition.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, that's my favorite part of my day. And plus, I end my day with more information. So I've been watching a lot of videos, Bob Proctor videos, really, to
Mm-hmm.
help
Mm-hmm.
me really grow in that. And so that's right now is my favorite part of my day.
I love it. I love that you talked about sacred brackets. It's something I talk about a lot, like how you start your day and how you end your day. If you get those right, the middle's so much easier, no matter what gets thrown at you in the middle. Okay, so it's starting to get a little cold out. So this is an even better question for right now. What's your current cozy?
My current cozy,
Yes.
uh, Pequeña and Paquito, my chihuahuas. My current
Oh.
cozy is lay on the couch. Got one on my back and I got one on my side, and then my partner is laying there, and then we're just watching some TV.
I bet that's their favorite thing
Their
too.
favorite cozy, because they're like, "Why are you always taking us to the office?"
We just want to be at home and cuddle
They
up,
want to be
right?
on the couch.
So much we could learn from our pets. So much. Okay, so this is going to be a good one for you. I'm very interested in your answer to this. What's your current go-to feel-good song?
My current go-to feel-good song. Um, well, one of my power songs uh, is "Didn't Know My Own Strength."
Mm-hmm.
Whitney, a man
Mm-hmm.
love me.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I need to feel like encouraged, I mean, it's funny because I haven't been listening to a lot of music, even though I love a lot of gospel.
Mm-hmm.
I love me some good gospel. So, one of my all time is "I Will Bless the Lord," Byron Cage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Sounds
that's
like you
one
might
for
need to be
me.
play a little bit more music in your life as we
I
get into
know,
this
right?
this season, right? Right?
Like I'm like listening to all these videos.
Yes, yes. What's one thing you do now for your 80-year-old self?
One thing I do now for my 80-year-old self
Mm-hmm.
is, well, I really try to move. I surf. We're going surfing next week. I love to
Oh, that's
surf.
fun.
And so right now, what I'm doing for my 80-year-old self is making sure that I do movement 5 times a week because they told me
Mm-hmm.
my cholesterol was a little something, something. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was like, no, I got to move. And
Yeah.
every morning I wake up and I take, I've started taking Shilajit,
Mm.
uh, Shilajit, like, and greens
Mm-hmm.
and making sure I'm hydrated because I know that exercise and movement is so important for my
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
making sure I'm taking some kind of supplement like greens and staying active. And I eat a salad every day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I really try to minimize the sugar, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like the sweet.
I know. But what we do now, we feel it 20 years from now, right? Like I'm learning that now in my 40s. I'm like, oh, and I'm
In your
telling my
40s,
kids and my
girl.
kids, I'm telling my kids in their 20s, what you do now, you'll start to feel in your 40s. And what I do now, I'm going to feel in my 60s. And when in my 60s, I'm going to feel in my 80s. So it's like, I want you to remember to live, but also while you're living, know that you're setting up this body to be able to either have a quality of life or not.
Yeah, activity. Staying active.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Yeah.
what? I live in New York City and we live on the fifth floor. So I walk up and down the stairs
That's
and I'm a
great. Yeah.
fast walker because I'm always in a hurry. So I'm like,
Yeah.
get out of my way.
I feel like everybody in New York is always in a hurry.
Like, I got things to do. Come on. Because you can walk everywhere. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like that is setting me up. Like there's a woman in my building. I don't know how old she is, but she passed the 80s. She almost in the
Mm-hmm.
90s. And she on the fourth floor, up and down. Because
Mm-hmm.
movement is the key
Yeah, it is.
to creating that strong body.
Yeah, you got to keep moving if you want to keep moving.
Yeah,
So, yeah, yeah.
move
Okay,
free. My partners move freely, live fully.
oh, I love that. I love that. Awesome. Okay, last question is how do you remember to live? In the middle of it all, how do you remember?
I connect with God.
Mm-hmm.
I connect with God and remember that everything is one. So sometimes I have to check myself and be like, really, Matt, none of this is like that important. Because as I tell everybody recently, it's either all God or it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
There's no separation. It's either all love or it isn't. Fear is the absence of love. So it's either all serving us or it's not. It can't be one or the other. So when I do that, I remember to sort of take some of the attachment off of things,
Yeah.
because when I attach meaning to it, that's when I suffer. When I attach meaning to stuff, I get into the duality of it. So when I find myself in a heated moment, that's where I really go to, is to be like, okay, everything is neutral. Nothing has meaning except the meaning that I give it. What's the meaning I'm giving to this? And is that meaning aligned with my highest self?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I do that, then the rest of it is like, okay, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
somebody
That's
said
good.
to me, I don't own anything. All this stuff, I'm like, oh, I'm so upset. It's like, it's just stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When I die, it's going to belong to
Mm-hmm.
somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be good because they got a lot of nice stuff they can look through. I got some nice crystals. I got some nice books. I ain't taking it with me. It's just
Right.
stuff.
It's
So
just for the experience. Yeah.
I just have to focus on, you know, how am I connecting with the spirit in front of me, and being a reflection of my higher self in every moment, and then I'll live fully.
I love that. Thank you, my friend. Tell everyone how they can get in touch with you, how they can connect with you, where they can find you. I'll put your talk and everything in the show notes. Yeah.
You can find me as A Matter of Practice on Instagram. Matt Cartwright Therapy is my website, A Matter of Practice, www.amatterofpractice.com. Because I do believe that everything is a matter of practice, and that we're always in practice. You know, people say practice makes perfect, and I say no, practice makes progress. You know, and practice creates patterns, and patterns create progress, really.
Yeah.
So the more we can recognize I'm just practicing, then we take, like I was just saying a moment ago, we take the attachment off of what it means.
Yeah.
And when you're practicing, you're growing. So amatterofpractice.com, that's my Instagram, my TikTok, all that stuff. I have a quiz that I've developed called the DIY Therapy Quiz, because I have my course coming out, How to Be Your Own Therapist, because I've learned that from both sides of the couch that we have to work on ourselves. And when we work on ourselves, we be a demonstration for others to follow.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you so much. I know we could talk for probably 3 more hours, but
people be like, how long is this podcast going?
But I appreciate you. I appreciate the light you bring. I appreciate the nuggets you share and the reminder to just remember to be.
Yeah. Remember to be. Who are you being in this moment is what creates your identity, and that's what truly matters.
Awesome.